Hi, my name's Hannah Marsh and I'm a co-founder of HomeViews, the residential review platform. We're part of Rightmove, and every year we bring out a build-to-rent report looking at the insights from residents currently living within build-to-rent developments who've written reviews on HomeViews, and we've combined that with Rightmove data looking at the demand and interest in build-to-rent on the Rightmove platform. So the build to rent report, it's huge. It's a big report, it's jam-packed. And what I've done is just highlight some of the key outtakes, just to give you a bit of a guide to help you navigate the report and look at some of the key data from 2024. So we've looked at the whole of last year. So firstly, I'd like to thank our sponsors and partners. So Yardi, Ask For, Zero Deposit, Electrolux Group and the ARL. We couldn't do it without you, so thank you. But this data set is huge. We've got all of our verified reviews, so that's almost 23,000 build-to-rent verified reviews looking up to the end of last year. So that's all gone into this report, as well as focused on 2024, which is close to sort of 7,000 reviews just captured in that past 12-month period. That gives us about a 95% coverage of all completed build-to-rent communities across the UK. We've combined that with data from over 16.4 billion minutes spent on Rightmove. It always amazes me, the Rightmove stats. And as I'm sure you can imagine, there's so many data points that we can draw upon to actually understand how residents are kind of experiencing and looking at build to rent on Rightmove. So what is the message? The sector's done it again, and I kind of say that lightheartedly, but it's quite incredible that build-to-rent ratings have reached a record high. I never think it can get better, but actually some of the data and stats that we've looked at from this past year have shown that the average overall rating in build-to-rent is now 4.53 out of 5. And I do think it's worth us taking a moment just to pause and think about that. Compare that to any other product from a review point of view, a sector that on average is delivering a resident rating of 4.53. It's a really astounding statistic. And I think the value metric as well, which whilst it's always the lowest, has gone up significantly in the 2024 period. So from 4.25 to 4.30. A phenomenal perception on value in a sector that's often perceived to be quite premium. But what we're seeing, even on some of the highest priced build-to-rent developments, that the value perception is very high and people feel like they're getting value for money with what's being delivered in this sector. So when we look at the latest figures for completed build-to-rent communities in the UK, it shows that 43% are in London. So it's actually a similar proportion of our all-time build-to-rent reviews are for London, making this actually quite a useful kind of comparison, looking at London ratings and comparing that to the rest of the UK. So London's always scored a little bit lower than the rest of the UK, but what we've seen is that in 2025 or 2024, London drove the biggest uplift for build to rent, and that's really kind of been the significant driver in that ratings increase for the last year. So Rightmove data also shows that the capital experienced lower rental growth than the rest of the UK in 2024. So I think seeing that perception on value rating go from 4.07 to 4.19 between 2023 and 2024. So when we compare all build-to-rent ratings with those from tenants and for sale homes, build-to-rent is actually rated higher across the board for the 5th year running. However, for sale tenants ratings did see greater improvement than build-to-rent in 2024. So with the overall rating rising from 3.9 to 4.11, and that was driven largely by improvement in management and value ratings. But this is something that we always look for. The for sale tenant is in a sort of like for like stock. So we're not comparing a tenant that's living in a terraced house. We're looking at tenants who live in new build developments and have chosen to sort of rent privately in those for sale developments. So it's a comparison of all types of build to rent stock against all type of for sale tenants across all different types of new homes buildings. Before we delve into some more detail, we thought it was good to actually just understand a little bit more about the build to rent audience. So what we've actually seen on Rightmove is an increasing number of new inquiries who are finding build to rent on Rightmove. This is some data that we included in our report, which is another free report called Guiding the BTR Consumer Journey. We looked at a lot of Rightmove data, and we also looked at HomeViews bespoke research that we did with residents already living within the development. So we know that appetite is increasing and that people are discovering the built for renters listings on Rightmove. But what are they inquiring for? And there's a product that Rightmove has, which is called Enhanced Leads. This is a product which enables you to help essentially pre-qualify renters and quickly match them to available properties. So we ask a series of questions to a prospective renter, and we're able to compare their responses from BTR inquiries to wider PRS percentage inquiries. So on a national level, this data provides some unique insights into the needs of renters inquiring about build to rent homes. But it's interesting to note here that inquiries to PRS from renters with families greatly outnumber those for build to rent. And this does reflect the smaller proportion of single family homes currently available compared with PRS and the scale of the opportunity for this subsector. Pets was actually one of the most searched for keywords. I think it was the most searched for keywords in March 2025 on Rightmove. So even though only 15% of inquiries are connected to pet friendly, it's an important factor for a specific group of renters and often hard to find. So I think even with the Renters' Rights Bill, it's something that people are sort of looking for and not necessarily easily finding. So it's a big part of search on Rightmove. One of the other pieces of research that Rightmove's done recently is speaking to renters and asking them about their kind of aspirations for home ownership. And as you can see here, even in that younger age group of 18 to 34, 95% of those renters were saying, yes, I want to own a home in the future. I think it's a very British cultural thing that we aspire and want to own a home. Interestingly, looking at the reasons behind that, a lot of the top reasons are actually very sort of emotional and emotionally needs met, which could be met and addressed very easily from a build to rent perspective. So the top one being, I want a place that truly feels like mine. I want more freedom to decorate and personalize and to feel a sense of stability and security. All things that actually build to rent are very well placed to sort of answer some of those sort of emotional needs by providing sort of stable and thriving communities for them to be part of and knowing that they can stay there for the long term. Within the report, we look at lots of subcategories. There's lots of opportunities where we've sort of split out and looked at the data by subcategories. We recognise these aren't perfect. There's a lot of debate in the industry about what we should label things. This is how we split it out in our previous year's report. And so actually, so we've got that continuity of data. We've kept these subgroups. We welcome any clarification within the sector about how we want to label these sectors. But this is how we've defined and looked at different subgroups for how we've split out our data in the report. And I think a real standout is co-living. So whilst the data is small, we don't have a huge amount of data on co-living at this time. It has actually in 2024 period, it outperformed pure build to rent. So those sort of amenitized apartments that we typically would have thought of for build to rent. So the overall rating is 4.66 compared with 4.61 for pure build to rent. Facilities was the category seeing the biggest difference between co-living and pure build to rent. And communal spaces were seen as a crucial factor for co-living. And the sector is clearly succeeding at creating shared spaces that work well for residents. Residents and ratings for single family and PRS homes revealed broadly similar themes to the previous year's data, with single family housing performing well and PRS dropping behind even further on management ratings in particular. One of the other pieces of data that we look at is the average rating for single family housing versus housing developments. So we try and compare like for like. So we're looking at housing stock and we're looking at tenant and owners that are sitting and living within housing developments. So this again shows for the 5th year running that single family housing residents have rated their homes higher overall than residents in the for sale housing developments. And as in previous years, management and facilities are the key factors driving this. So unlike other build-to-rent formats where a wide range of extra amenities is a key differentiating factor, single-family housing success really hinges on providing outstanding customer service and management of the essential facilities offered. Even things such as like Wi-Fi included and on-site maintenance are things that we are seeing talked about frequently within review sentiment. We had a bit of play with the data. This is actually something that you could do within our HomeViews Pro product. You can split and cut the data however you want on HomeViews. We've put all of the data on the front end into a back end. You can group by location, by company, by development level, and actually compare and contrast ratings. So we actually looked at in-house versus third party as a comparison. And we looked at this for all-time data for about 55 operators, sort of split into these sort of offerings. And the average ratings for management and customer service were almost identical between the two groups. The minimum and maximum ratings were also very similar, but more in-house teams can be seen to sort of reach or come close to a 5-star ratings for both categories. So, I think it's a really interesting way to start looking at how this sector is evolving with an increasing amount of third-party operators who seem to be holding their own against in-house management. So we have a big sections on design and facility. There's a lot of data and a lot more slides in the report. One of the slides that we've actually got in the report is we've looked at all of the key features on a built for renters listing. And we've looked at the proportion that are actually being chosen by operators to advertise. So an operator gets to select how they want to describe and advertise their property on Rightmove from sort of a whole list of key features. And so what we looked at was versus 2023 versus 2024, what change there was in how people were choosing to advertise their properties. This graph is then a sort of summary of the key change. And so you actually can see what's actually gone up in that previous year and what we've seen less of. So it reveals trends in how facilities are worded in listings. And although fully managed and professional management was seen in a lower proportion of listings in 2024, some elements of these services were seen in greater proportions. So on-site maintenance went up, as an example. Now, what does this mean? I think what's really interesting looking at all this, and if you're into sort of your digital marketing, or certainly if you're looking after your Rightmove listings account, you'll be wanting to pour through this data. This data shows how the inclusion of specific facilities in listings correlates with the average number of inquiries generated. So which of these are getting a higher than average amount of inquiries on a listings. And a number of the facilities that were associated with actually generating greater number of leads than average were included actually in a lower proportion of listings in 2024 versus 2023. So fully managed, professional management, security and zero deposit all were kind of had sort of reduction of them being featured, but actually they're features that actually are well received and increase inquiries on site. We've also compared the lived experience. So we've looked at the essential facilities for top rated build to rent developments and compared that to the bottom 10 of facilities. And we can see the key features that are offered by all, which is, co-working, gym, pet friendly. We know which the top performing developments are all consistently offering and increasingly important to residents living within build to rent. We've also created a number of graphs looking at all the different subsectors. So I'm just going to explain these graphs. I think they're really interesting graphs to look at if you love your data. If we look at the pure build to rent graph as an example, the facilities rating is telling you that if a development has a private garden, what is the average star rating that development is achieving? But then on the right, it tells you the frequency of the facilities. So you can see that sort of less than 1 or 2% of build to rent developments advertise that they have a private garden on offer. So you want to look at the frequency of how those facilities are being offered versus actually how that might correlate to a positive rating on site. So we've done that overall, but we've also done that by the subgroups within build to rent. So pour through the data and the detail if you're looking at which amenities, which facilities are having the best impact on demand but also having the best impact on resident experience. In the report, we've also got lots and lots of rankings and details on some of our sub-measurements, so value, facilities, location. We've put down what are the top 10 in 2024, which developments scored the highest, and we've done some key case studies about why. So we've pulled out for each of those sections, like why is location being scored so highly for this development, what are the factors that we can see through the reviews and through the data. So there's lots and lots of insights and case studies to support you in your understanding of what's happening in build to rent in the last year. And we also have a huge section in the report dedicated to our Resident Choice Awards from 2025. So it was a huge event, really successful event for 350 people attended in February at the Fox in Birmingham, where we celebrated those developments that were performing at the top of their game and delivering the highest rated resident experience on HomeViews in 2024. So all of the shortlisted and winners are in the report, so you can see who was performing at the top in the last year. And we've also just announced our award date for 2026, which will be again back at the Vox in Birmingham on the 12th of February. So we look forward to seeing lots of you there. I hope this summary was helpful, gives you a kind of an overview about some of the key things that you can find in the report, and happy reading. Please do click on the link and download.